I am Karen Plater, and I'm the outgoing Associate Secretary for Stewardship and Planned Giving. And I've been assisting with the statistical report now for about 5 or 6 years together with Maggie. And both of us are retiring this year. So Maggie as of the end of March, and me, I'll be around till the end of September. So we're passing the baton to Connie Wardle, who is the new senior administrator with the General Assembly office, and training her. I'll be around to answer questions and help orient her throughout this year's statistical report process. But then she's taking it on for next year. So we hope that everything will go smoothly. Karen Wilson, who some of you may have corresponded with last year, she's has been a church treasurer for a Presbyterian congregation, and so is familiar with filling out the congregational statistical report from the treasurer perspective. But we hired her on a contract last year. She did an excellent job helping us to get the answers that we needed, and so she's going to continue that this year. So you may hear from myself, Connie, or Karen. Maggie is along to support this presentation and make sure I don't do anything wrong and help answer questions, but she'll be officially finished by the end of March. Important email for you to have is the statistics@presbyterian.ca email. That one will be checked by multiple people, so that's the fastest way to get the answers that you need. Just a reminder that the statistical report becomes the official record that tells a story or one part of the story about the denomination. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen right now. Okay. Thank you, Connie. Let me just try and do that again because it looked like it was sharing from mine perspective. Okay, here we go. Let me go back in here. Okay. All right, share. Okay, and here we go. Oh, it says your presentation stopped. Try sharing again. Well, we're going to do that. Okay, let me see. And Maggie, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that now? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So you will, let me just go back one more previous. Let me see where we go. Oh, yes. So this is the statistical report is our official record. It has been produced in the Acts and Proceedings last year. We had a technical difficulty doing that, so it was produced separately. This year, it will be produced once again, either in the AMP or separately. We're still determining that, but we're determined to have both of them produced by the beginning of September. It is used to determine the health of congregations by presbyteries and to calculate the dollar base, which is used for the pension assessment, the Presbyterian sharing allocation, and some presbytery and synod assessments. So it is an important thing, and we're going to go through it all now. So I hope that most of you have been able to download the forms that you need, but if not, you can find it on the resources, the finance section of the resources section on the PCC page. And we've got there's a quick that will take it to you. You'll see that there are two different types that can be downloaded. There is an Excel or there is a PDF. And if you click on your Excel or you click on the PDF, you should get in your downloads folder or somewhere the worksheet as the PDF or the worksheet as the Excel. These two look quite different because the PDF worksheet comes from a Word document, and the Excel sheet has lots of built-in formulas to it. So the only one we can automatically import this year is the Excel. Previous years, we were importing information from PDFs as well, but we found there were a number of complications and glitches with that. So we are only importing from the Excel form this year. If you need to use the PDF to fill it out, either by hand or if you can automatically fill in a PDF, you've got a PDF writer to fill it in, send it to us, and then we have somebody who will enter it into the Excel and who we can then import it from there. Our preference is if you're able to use the Excel, please do so. So you'll note that the PDF is not fillable unless you have a PDF editor. You can take a photo or scan it back to us, or you can print it out and send it in that way. It's great for us if you are able to email it back to us. It gets to us quicker. It also means that it's easy for us to share with the different people who will be working on it. And Canada Post just doesn't seem to be too reliable these days, unfortunately, because I love my Canada Post. But yeah, if you can do that, that would be great. But we will gratefully accept them however you get the information to us. That is what is important. All of the ones with the yellow boxes on both the PDF and the Excel are the information that you need to be able to fill out. Let's go. There we go. If you, though, open the Excel, you'll notice that there are two sheets in the file. There is a congregational life and a congregational financial form. So if you look at the very bottom of your Excel, you should see the two sheets, one which is congregational life and the other is congregation financial. If you're going to submit the Excel, we ask that you fill out both of these and then submit it. But often there are different people who are filling out the congregation life and the congregation financial. So if you have one person fill it out, then have them share the file with the other person, and then they can send it in. Please send us with both sections filled out. It's much harder to combine if we have two different informations, but if we can get it in one Excel document, it's nice and easy for us to do the import. So one thing that is nice, at least it worked for about, I'd say 80% of people last year who went to use it. In the Excel, there is a drop-down list with the presbytery box, but this is only supported on Excel versions 2016 or greater. So we do have a few people out there who are using Excel versions older than 2016, and you may find that the drop-downs don't work. Don't worry about it. Just type in your presbytery and congregational name and city and code manually. You will get an error message in the congregational code box, but don't worry about it. We're going to fix it for you. If you can use the drop downs and successfully fill it out, the good news is that it will fill out both sheets at the same time. So you want to start by filling out in the congregational life, and then it will fill out the information on the congregational financial page. Okay, so in order to yeah, you can see here, once you've chosen the presbytery, you're going to get a list of the congregation's names, as up to date of a list as it was when we set this up a month ago. And then automatically your congregational code will fill in. So we're hoping that this will reduce the errors, and it did last year, of the congregational code and the name. Right. Then, once you do that, you can start filling out your statistics. So the statistics on the congregational life, the first questions we asked are line 4, the number of ruling elders on session. So you enter your number of elders, and then whether or not your session uses term service for elders. So yes, if you do, and no, if you don't. All right. The next question is the total number of children and youth aged 0 to 18 who participate in the life of the congregation, whether they are members, children of members or adherents, come on their own, or attend with friends. So this is an independent number that we're asking so people can just get an idea of the number of children and youth. The total number of households. A household is a residence with one or more professing members or adherents. And you can see the definitions in line 8 and 9 on members and adherents. And the baptisms is the number of baptisms that took place. And you can see there's a couple of age groups, adult, and then infant, children, and youth, which will give you the total baptisms. So this is the first point that I'll make. You're to fill in the boxes with the yellow background. If it has a 0 in it and it's a white box, that means that it's going to calculate automatically. If you try to enter in any of the other white box surrounding the form or any box that's not a yellow box, you will get a message to say that the sheet is password protected. So, and that's an indicator for you that you're not on the right box. So as long as you're in the yellow boxes, you should be able to add information. And this is just so that we don't have information put in the wrong boxes or the questions changed. Question number 8 is the professing members. And so a professing member is defined as those who have been admitted into the fellowship of the Lord's table and on profession of their faith in Christ and obedience to them have been received by the session, as defined in the Book of Forms. So you can fill in your professing membership. Now you can see it looks a little bit complicated, but it's not as hard as you think. This is going to be one of those automatically adding sections because we want to know how many were added because of profession of faith and how many were added because of a transfer or active session. So you start by putting the total number as of January 1st, 2025. So that number should be the same as your December 31st, 2024 statistical report. So you can go back and look what number was reported in 2024. If, for some reason, your congregation did not submit a statistical report, don't worry about going back to multiple years and giving us a number that's inaccurate. If you haven't filled out a recent statistical report on line 8A, just put what number you had there. And we're going to start with that number. We're not going to try and catch up with previous statistical reports. So you're going to put the ones added. Then you're going to put the ones removed by certificate of transfer, by death, or by revision of the roll. And then those are going to automatically calculate for you, and we will know. So we're wanting to know the number that you have. The final number is as of December 31st, 2025. All right, then we have anyone who is associated with the congregation, but who are not members are your adherents under pastoral care. So in the end, your adherents and your members should add up to everybody who is attending or participating in the worship and life of your congregation, which is different from line 10, which is your estimated weekly worship attendance. Now, those of you who've been filling this out for a few years may note that this year we're not asking for the online or hybrid attendance numbers. We did that for a number of years following COVID. There were some interesting numbers for us to have, but we found nobody was really doing anything with those figures. So we're just saying estimate whatever your normal attendance is, and that can be online or in person, whatever you think your normal attendance is. Then we come to the contacts. So the first contact that you fill out is going to be the person who has filled out the congregational life section of the statistical report. And this is because we want to know if there's anything that looks wrong to us and we need to clarify it. This is the person we're going to contact because they were the one who filled out the form. We've had times where, sometimes there was, 50 baptisms reported and we're like, wow, that's great. But they only have, really small congregations. So then we might check and sure enough, there was an error and it was 5 baptisms. So things like that can happen and we'll just check. But then your clerk of session and your treasurer, we're looking for the current clerk of session and the current treasurer as of when you fill out the statistical report. If you have any changes to the clerk of session after you've submitted your statistical report and or the treasurer, you can send those changes along at any time. So this is just so that we have that information. So that's it for your congregational life. Then we move into the congregational financial section of the report. And this is the one where most people have questions on. But every year we try to make it a little simpler. Again, if you have filled out the congregational life section, it should automatically fill in the presbytery and the name and the congregational code on the financial section. And that's why they are not yellow, because it will automatically fill. So even if you're doing the financial section first, just don't worry about filling it in at the top. When they do the other section, it will get filled in for us. This is very important. Where do the numbers come from? It's important that we're looking for the figures, the financial figures that are reflected under your charitable number. So we have some churches where the WMS is included under their charitable number, and some where WMS is got their own charitable number. Only include it if it's reported and figure out of your charitable number. But we want you to use your operating and your statements that come from both your operating budget and your operating financials and any funds that you have. So it may be a capital fund, it may be a special fund that you have for a mission, whatever funds that you may have. We do put what numbers correspond with the numbers in your T3010. You don't have to complete the T3010 before the stat report because we're really looking for the high level numbers. We don't need all the details and breakdowns that are required in the T3010. But this is just telling you that it's going to be approximately what is in your T3010. If for some reason there's a variance from your T3010, don't worry about it as long as you're answering the questions that we want to come. But most of the time they do correspond. Every once in a while there is an exception. So as we start to go through the financial section, you'll notice this is new from last year, that at the beginning we want to know the operating fund balance that you had as of December 31st, 2024, and then the reserved and restricted or special funds balance collectively as of December 31st, 2024. And these you're going to fill out right at the very top. And the reason that we're doing this is that the questions that we are all asking you for 2025 is what was raised and spent in 2025. So, and then you may have some figures that were raised in 2025 but aren't going to be spent until 2026 or 2027. And you'll see that there's a place to report those. So this is just going to help us. We have asked this question at the beginning, we ask it at the end, and that just helps us reconcile where you have the different numbers. We realized it was a missing point of information. We thought if we had that information last year, it would have helped us help some of the congregations that had challenges. All right. In line 20, the total revenue, you're going to see that there's a lot of information, but there's only one yellow box. And so that's to say that we have said all this information, all of this income is part of line 20. But really, it's the line that it corresponds with your line 4700 on the T3010. So we don't need all of the details of this. We only need the final number. And so sometimes we have people trying to fill in the details and going, oh, that's when they think that they need a password. And yeah, just fill in the total amount in line 20. So a few years ago, we decided that we were going to align the statistical report as much as we could with the T3010 just to make it easier for treasurers and bookkeepers. But really, to create the dollar base, we need a bit more information than what the government is interested in. So, for example, when the government asks for the total revenue that the congregation has received and receipted, there is some revenue that is not going to be spent this year. For example, if you received a large bequest or an endowment fund. So, for the dollar base, we're only interested in the money, well, the money that was received in 2025 and going to be spent in 2025, or was received in previous year and is going to be spent in 2025. So we ask a few other questions that are really only relevant for the calculation of the dollar base. So for the statistical reasons, we're interested in the total revenue that corresponds with the T3010 line 4700. But for the dollar base, we are going to do some additions or subtractions. And so that's what these next questions come up for. We're going to see line 16 is revenue raised for reporting in the reporting year. So you've receipted it, but you're not actually going to spend it until the future. And so again, as I said, this might be a bequest. It might be a capital campaign that you're doing. So you're raising money, but you have to get to a certain amount before you can actually spend it. Now, in this line 16 and in the previous line, we don't think our reading of the T3010 is that you should not include unrealized gains and losses. If there's realized gains and losses, then that's okay to include them. But if there are unrealized, they haven't actually been realized, so you see them in your reports if any of you have money in the consolidated portfolio. So don't include those. We're only interested in the money that has actually been received. Now, if you read the T3010 differently, because some people interpret lines differently, and you're including it in your line 4700, just don't include it for us. And it's okay if that doesn't correspond directly with your T3010. So that's line 16. And yeah, then line 17 is the revenue that was received in past years, but you're going to use it this year. So this could be money that you have in a fund for mission and you're pulling out the interest every year, or their capital. It could be for your capital project. It could be for whatever expenses that you have this year. If you've got expenses this year that were covered from revenue in the previous years, you're going to report them in line 17. Now, we aren't as much interested, it doesn't matter to us as much. A number of you, because we know that there's, expenses that the church has, and so you keep a balance in your bank account or your operating fund. You have a bank balance. If your bank balance was reported in previous years and as received income, you do not need to bring it in here on line 17. So it's really only if it's significant funds that are contributing to the mission of the church that is in line 17. And that's what having that bank balance from 2024 and 2020 and the end of 2025, we're going to be able to compare that, and we'll be able to see, oh, it's just being covered by your bank balance. And those funds were probably reported in previous years. So don't have to get too uptight about it. And you can just let us know. But the principle is that the income that was reported in line 16 on previous years, that this is now coming out and it's finally being spent on line 17. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily increase your dollar base, because if any of that revenue was spent on buildings, you're going to see that's going to be excluded under the expenditures, or if it was spent on mission, it's going to be excluded. It just tells us that you had the income for that. And so it tells us that that's where those exclusions come in. So we don't want, for example, building or mission expenses to be deducted from income that's not reported. Okay, so line 14, now you're like, why is the numbers why are they mixed up? Why don't you just go 16, 17, 18? This is because we have done a little bit of shuffling over the years, and line 14 is still collecting the same information it collected a number of years ago. It's just calculated slightly different. So we calculate now line 14 by taking line 20, all the revenue raised in the reporting year, or all the revenue raised, and we take out the revenue reserved for future years and we add back in revenue from past years, and this is going to give us line 14, which is the revenue that your expenditures are going to be based on. So that's the revenue. We're going to come now to the total expenditure lines. And your expenditures, we're going to start right off by just asking you, oops, and this is a little bit different from last year's. Right up front, what was your total expenditures for your reporting year? So that's going to be line 5,100 in your T3010. If you include any amortization in line 5,100, don't include that in this line 27. We're not interested in amortizations. We're only interested in real expenses. Also, for multi-point charges, we only want you to include expenses related to the reporting congregation. So don't include the expenses for the other congregation. Even if you're paying the minister and you have it on your financial statements, for the statistical report, we only want the line 27. We also don't want to have HST or GST, so you can deduct the HST, GST. We don't have HST, GST as a revenue in the revenue section, so we don't want to have it as in the expenditures. So that should be balanced out or zeroed out. All right, your expenditure deductions. Now, these are all going to take deductions that the General Assembly has approved of over the years that we say we don't want congregations to be taxed on this for their assessments, their pension assessment or their presbytery assessment, and we don't want it to be part of the allocation for Presbyterian sharing. So these are the various things that have been either approved by General Assembly or it just because of the questions that were asked for the T3010. So the first one is any fundraising expenditures. And so that's, for example, and one of the good ones that came in over the years is that was a congregation in the Maritimes. They do a beautiful lobster dinner. And so the cost of the lobster, you do not need to, it may be part of the revenue if you've sold tickets for that, but you can actually deduct the cost that then was paid for the lobster in the fundraising expenditures, so that we aren't including the actual expense that wasn't a revenue for the congregation. We really just want to know what was the net, not the gross. So this helps ensure that you're only reporting the net fundraising, whereas the T3010 asks for your gross fundraising. So that's why we have that line. Your line 22B recognizes that similar idea that renting out your facilities, there's a gross and there's a net line. When we did, for a number of years, we collected the gross and net rent, and we found generally that around 15% was a fair number for congregations to deduct from the rent that they have. Now, if you think your rental costs are more than 15%, you're more than welcome to prorate your building expenses according to the time and the space used the renters. And you can use whichever figure is greater. There are some congregations that they are providing a very subsidized rent rate for the people who are using their facilities. So we just want to make sure that this actually reflects the net amount congregations are getting for rent rather than your gross amount.
Karen, can I jump in for a little bit?
Yep.
Yeah, for this rental expenditures, I received a question from a congregation that they don't have a property, but they are renting a place for the church to do worship and other activities.
Oh,
Whether that rental expenditure is included here, it is not. It's only the property that the congregation is owning that you're renting it out.
exactly. So it's been an income. So that's why we are trying to deduct this from the income that the church is getting. So great question, Maggie, and we'll have to think about how to make that clear on this line. All right, debt repayment is you record the principal and interest payments that you've made towards the long-term debt or mortgages or loans. And again, if you're making the debt repayments, somewhere the income that you have had to pay off that debt needs to be reflected in the income line. So either it's come from gifts this year or gifts made in the past. And then line 25 is any expenses for major repairs, renovations, or new buildings spent in the reporting year. So this can be things such as excluding your regular maintenance. So this can be repairs to your HVAC, your roof, your windows, even organ or a piano replacement would be considered for that. The rule of thumb is about if it's a major repair renovation if it's more than 10% of your regular maintenance expenditures, or of your overall church expenditures. In past years, we used to try and be tighter on that, and the time to sort of follow up and see was this 10% or not 10%, it wasn't worth it. So we're trusting you to only include your major repairs, renovations, and new buildings in this line. And then we come to mission. We also, for the dollar base, didn't want to include the many funds that congregations raise for mission. And some congregations, their mission funds far out are larger than their operating budget funds. But we ask for a few specific things about mission. What we're really interested in the end is the total for mission, so it can be deducted on your dollar base. But over the years, we've identified that there's a variety of ways that people report mission. And so we wanted to be sure that all of those were included. So you'll see if you do refugee sponsorships authorized by the Canadian government, and in all of these lines, we don't want double reporting. So if there's something that you think, oh, this could either be line E or line 26C or line 26E or line 26E1, it doesn't matter to us that much. We're not looking at the specific details of this. What we're interested in is the total number. So just be sure that you don't report or double report any expenditures on any of these lines. So line 26E is your gifts made to qualified donees serving local, national, and international ministry needs. Now, this includes all the gifts that you made to the PCC. Every year, Maggie and I do a data integrity check to make sure that this number is larger than the gifts actually submitted to the PCC. And inevitably, there's a number of congregations where the number is quite a bit less, and they've forgotten to include the gifts that were made to the PCC. It is not your presbytery or synod assessments. That is our fees for participating in ministry as part of the PCC, and it's not considered voluntary gifts to mission. So that's something that's very important. So you can see that. Then we've got the list of oh, okay. So then you can do a list of your qualified donees and in line 26E, and that just helps us to know who you have been supporting. The line 26E is your gifts made by individuals directly to the PCC. So you'll be like, well, how do I know what individuals made their gifts directly to the PCC? Well, this is where you're going to need to pull up your congregational remittance report. And this is one from 2024, but it would be the same this year. When you get these reports, and they were sent in the mail last month, so most of you should have gotten the reports. They are on the Congregational Treasurer's portal, so you can download them there. Or if you need to get a new report, send us an email and we'll email it to you. But you can see if you had any individuals who asked that their gifts be credited to your congregation, whether it's for Presbyterian Sharing, PWS&D, or other mission, they will be listed there. And so this you do not include in your T3010, but you do include it here as a deduction. It's a little bit of a bonus for the church because you haven't actually claimed the income, but we decided that's a nice little bonus to give you. Then the non-qualified donees, grantees, this was added recently by the government, so you can also include your non-qualified donees in this, as the same as on your T3010. Line 26G is funds spent for special projects and community or ecumenical mission projects. So they're not really part of your qualified donees or your non-qualified donees. It would be, you would have reported it as part of the mission work of the church. So it doesn't quite fit the T3010, but the intention here is that you're not being assessed on funds that are really flow through funds. So if you've got a camp that you're running that's sort of semi-independent, it might be an out of the cold program, a food bank, something like that, and you are issuing the receipts on behalf of the community for this ecumenical mission project. That's where you're going to put it. Okay. And then you can describe it briefly. And then finally, any funds which are covered by government or PCC grants and not reported on any of the above lines can be reported on line 26H. And that's because, again, you're getting this grant, so your revenue is increasing, but none of the grant is really available for operating fund. So you can exclude it here and it will not increase your dollar base. This was a big fear that people wouldn't want to start or get government grants because they'd get this money that would increase their dollar base, but they wouldn't have the corresponding income to actually increase their assessments. So we have it there. So that's going to give us your total mission expenditures for the reporting year, and that is going to be auto-calculated from all of those boxes that you have filled in before. Again, if you're unclear, if you're pretty sure it's mission, but you're unclear, does it go into 26E or 26H? Just fill it out, describe your projects, and as long as there's no duplication, it's going to be fine. All right, so that comes to line 28. This is really a check information for us. It's not really to correspond or say how many congregations do we have who have a surplus or a deficit. It's just to say that it should be pretty close to zero. So unless you're covering some expenses from your that are in your operating bank balance, it should be pretty close to zero. And if you have a large surplus there that isn't from your bank balance, then you probably need to report more of your income into line 16. And if you have a deficit, it probably means that you've missed some income. And so you need to increase the amount that is in line 17. The money must have come from somewhere if you've paid those expenses. All right, then you can see that line 28 and line 28B, these are the new figures that we're asking this year, just so that we can, when we're doing our checks, we can see what the operating balance was for 2025 compared with 2024 for both your restricted and operating funds. And then that'll just help us to know, are you missing income or aren't you missing income? And that'll help us do our final check. We're not doing anything with the money. We're not informing anything. It's just sort of information. Your presbyteries might be interested in that too, for health of the congregation, but yeah. All right, the dollar-based calculation. So once we have all of those figures, this is going to calculate, if you're using the Excel, automatically for you. If you're doing the PDF, you're going to need to pull out your calculator and actually move the lines down and do the calculations yourself. So line 14, which is your total revenue for congregational purposes for use in the reporting year. So that's all the revenue you used this year. You're going to put that in line 14. Then you're going to take off those fundraising expenditures so that you're getting the net instead of gross fundraising. You're going to put in any rental expenditures so that we're getting your net instead of your gross rent. You're going to throw in the debt repayment. You're going to put in any total building or capital expenditures that you have and all of your mission expenditures. And that is what is finally going to get us your dollar base. So the dollar base is supposed to reflect your operating expenses for the current year. The dollar base is always reported in the previous acts and proceedings or the statistical part as it was last year. If the figure is vastly different this year, without a reason which you're aware of, so if you've added a new minister, for example, so your expenditures are up, then that means that, oh, okay, well, that's why our dollar base has increased it. But if you can't figure it out, then there may be an error in calculations, or you can, give us a call and we'll help you sort it out. So once we've done all that, you get asked a few questions about the accommodation for principal minister. This is for the information of presbyteries and the GAO office to make sure that the accommodations are being properly paid, as well as just statistic to know how many manses that there are and not manses. So you're reporting this separate. They don't add up. You're just giving us specific information about the accommodation for the principal minister. And then you'll see that there is other ministers are then asked. So if you've got one or two or three other ministers, you can also fill those out. These are for ordained and diaconal ministers on the constituent roll. So don't include interim moderators, interim ministers, or stated supplies, no matter how long they've been serving the congregation. Report the figures as of December 31st, 2025. So if somebody has, they only worked for part of the year and they're no longer on December 31st, 2025 working for the church, you don't need to report what you paid them. For a multi-point charge, enter the amount paid by a congregation, filling in the form, not the total paid to the minister. So this will reflect the amount your congregation is paying for the minister. The CRA registration, every year you must file your CRA registration figures. So you want to tell us what date in 2025 when your 2024 was filled in. If you have a new CRA number per chance, just send us that in by email and we'll update that on our information. If you do not do your T3010s on time, you can risk losing your charitable status. So this helps us make sure that our congregations are filling those forms out. A reminder, all of these lines are being filled in from a consolidated financial statements. So if you have financial statements for a number of different funds at your church, then you want to add them all up together and then report them all. Anything that is reported under your charitable registration number. All right, this recording will be posted hopefully within a day or two. It might be early next week because James, who helps post it, is on holiday this week for March break, as many of the families are in your churches, perhaps. So it might be early next week, but as soon as we have it up, feel free to share it now. Just a few emails or web links that are important for filling out your forms. All right, so now we have time for the Q&A. So if there are any questions, and I can finally stop talking, and I've got another meeting that's going to start in around 3 o'clock. So I told them might be a little bit late for it. So let's get your questions answered.
There is one coming in to the Q&A from Corey.
Okay.
What if a congregation has money in non-operating funds, which have been claimed in box 14 in previous years, but they are using those funds now?
That's fine. Then just send us a note. That is the principle. I had a few congregations last year, and we could do because we don't want it to get too complicated for you if you're like, have I claimed it or haven't I claimed it? So if you're pretty sure we've claimed this in previous years in line 14, send us a note and we can do a one-time adjustment for this year to sort of get them back in. And so you'd have a lower assessment for 1 year. Or if it's easy for you to keep track of, just say, nope, those were reported in previous years. So we're sort of going on honor and system and that you understand the principles of it. That's fine with us.
So there are a few hands up, so maybe we can start with that.
Yep. If you sort of choose, Maggie, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I
stop
actually
sharing
couldn't
so I
see. Let me
Okay.
see. Brenda. Brenda, you may want to. Oh, are you muted? Let me see if how to unmute you. Yep, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you. Can you try again?
Oh.
Brenda, can you try again? Oh, there is no mic option from you.
Okay, just a second. I'm going to see if I can get this.
Yeah.
Everyone has no mic option. Okay, I've got a feeling that this is going to be a setting.
Yeah.
Meeting info, and I created this, so let's see. Did you? I think we're supposed to be able to unmute people. Let me see if I can do it. Allow mic. Okay. Brenda, now you have to unmute yourself, but that should work.
I can unmute her.
I am now I'm going to go to SAPC Treasurer as well and see if I can allow mic. Oh, come. Okay, SAPC Treasurer, you maybe no. It's controls. Here's my control. Yay! Yes, yeah. Why don't you ask your question?
So do you want to go back and try Brenda?
Allow all participants to unmute themselves. I've just clicked one that says allow all participants to unmute themselves. So you should be able to now.
So I'll mute myself so Brenda can try.
Or why don't you ask, and then Brenda can see if she can unmute hers while you ask your question.
Okay, my question has to do with line 25, with the expenses for major repairs. I just want to confirm, does that include major repairs to the manse building as well as the church building? Or is that just the church building?
No, I think it would include major repairs for your manse building.
For the manse building? Okay, good. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Yep. James Heard, you want a question?
I have a question. I have a couple of comments later, but my question is with respect to the line that says qualified donees list, 50 characters max. We've got a number of situations where the list is longer than that. And I'm just wondering, it used to be a separate form. What are we supposed to do there?
You could just include it when you send it back, include the list in the email. That would be fine. So when you send it back, or if you put it on, just if you're doing it manually, include another page with them. The idea was that we didn't want to see duplications. You can use acronyms, you can use anything type of short form. But if you've got a lot, just when you're sending the form back, just say see text and email or something like that, and we'll see what we can do. We use it mostly for checking the information to make sure there's not duplications or you're not including presbytery and synod assessments.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Ernest. And then I'll go Ernest and then Robert. Yeah. Oh, Ernest, you're still muted. You should be able to hit unmute. Don't know if I can unmute you. Disable. Robert, well, can you unmute? Well, he's looking for, yeah, Robert, you go ahead,
Okay.
and then Ernest, keep looking for your unmute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. I have two questions related to line 28. They're related a little bit to the question that Corey had, and it was just for clarification. The first one is the last bullet says, if you have a small deficit, basically don't worry about it. Do you have a definition of what small would be?
Okay, it is connected. So it's not if you have a small deficit. If it is being covered by income that you have already reported in previous years, that's when we're not going to worry about it. So that's your sort of check. As long as it's covered. So if you have like a bank balance that you're like, yes, we've reported it this, because it's a little bit new for us to do so specific, the line 16 and the line 17. So ideally, if you had, even your bank balance, if you reported it in line 16, but a lot of congregations didn't do that in the past. So as long as it's being covered by income that you have reported in the past, then just tell us that. In fact, even if it's large, if you can just say in your email, there is a large balance, and you tell us the reason why, then we're going to be like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. A number of our congregations in the Ottawa Presbytery, in fact, are in that situation where they've already been assessed for money that they might be using to cover a deficit.
Yep.
This problem only occurs if you have a deficit.
Yep.
And if you have a deficit, then presumably you're drawing down on a reserve of some sort, but often enough that has been pre-assessed, and it's very hard to keep track of that. That's the problem, essentially.
Yeah. So if people want to, if that's what they think for this 1 year, then, and they think they've got this income, whatever fund it is that you've got the money in, whether it's your bank balance or if it's been put into a special fund and you're pretty sure that it's been pre-assessed, we could include it. I'm trying to think, if you include it this year, it would lower your dollar base for this year. And then going forward, you would always report it in line 17. So like it only gets assessed 1 year. That's our intention. Money should only be assessed 1 year. So as long as you understand that principle, we'll work with you to however we can make it easier for somebody moving in the future. Because if it was assessed previous years, it means that you've already been assessed on it, right? You've already paid for that money. So we can either take it out this year and then you won't be assessed this year and it would come in the next year. But it's just as long as you sort of understand that copy. We don't want to double assess you. Kind of like a reimbursement. Okay, Ernst, could you figure it out?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Each year, we're in the pastoral charge. We have a sister congregation upriver. And the question is, does the congregation owe the manse? No, we don't.
Okay.
But the sister congregation owns a manse.
That's fine.
And we share expenses throughout 60-40, 60 on our part.
Okay. Yep.
Except for repairs to the manse, that's at 50. Okay. So how is the minister housing covered? Indicate the most applicable one. Well, lives in a manse, which sort of would imply that we have a manse, but we don't.
I think, okay, so I would say that the congregation that is got the manse should say, yes, we have the manse, and that they live in the manse. The congregation that doesn't should say, no, we don't have a manse because you don't have a manse. And you should say that you're paying a housing allowance, even though it's not technically a housing allowance to the minister. That's what you're paying. It's just that it's going to the other congregation. That's what I think. I'm open. That one is actually a GAO question, so I'm open. They don't want you both to reply, yes, we have a manse, because that'll make us think that there's two manses. Like in the end, it's how many manses are there in the Presbyterian Church in Canada, from what I understand.
I've always looked for a line to make that explanation, but it's not there.
Yeah, so actually, we always take this comment. This is the first time I've heard that one. So we will try and put that in for next year.
That sounds good.
That's a
Yeah.
good, that's good input.
And
I
I would suggest that you can include that in the email so that we have a note of that and wouldn't double like enter both
Right.
congregation will have a mess.
Okay.
Yep.
I have another question.
Yep.
That we have operations. There's a central account for the pastoral charge, which has a separate treasurer and they do their own thing. I do not report those transactions. And we also have PCW. They have an account. They do their own thing. They have their own treasurer. And those figures are not reported. And
What
it's
is-
like they're nominal figures, but just the same, they're not reported.
And are they using your CRA number to issue receipts?
No,
Then don't worry. Yep, you don't need to report it.
perfect.
Only if they're using your number to issue receipts.
No,
Yep. That's fine.
okay, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Great. Mac.
Yes, I have a question and a kind of a comment. First of all, thank you for the webcast. It's helpful. Second thing is, what do you do with a gift in kind? Does it get treated any differently, or is it just another bit of revenue that goes where you would think to put it, like any other contribution?
I think that they're asking in your revenue line for everything that you've receipted, and you're supposed to include the amount of the gift in kind because you're providing a receipt for the gift in kind. If for some reason the gift in kind, you think if you've provided a receipt and it's being used for, say, mission expense, or any of the excluded purposes, you could then exclude it under those lines. But if it's for your operating, so let's say somebody gave a gift in kind of a computer that was for your minister, then it would be included in your, then it does get included in your dollar base.
Okay. And my comment is
Yep.
that maybe I know there are three of us who do a lot of head scratching over the PCC consolidated fund reports for our congregation.
Okay,
And
yes.
it's become, I would say, increasingly challenging to tease out what's realized income. I guess we know the unrealized, but the one I would expect would be easy is hard.
Right.
Especially in the last quarter, and it's aggravating.
That's a good point. And I've never actually seen a report from the consolidated portfolio. So maybe I'll take a look. I'll ask financial services if they can share
Well, you can
with
look
us.
at ours if you want.
Okay, well, send me an email and we'll take a look at it and we'll see if we can help. And if we can't, we'll see how we can like revise that information. But yeah, we'll talk to them about that because that is important. You are supposed to report your realized. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
James, you said you had a couple of comments.
Yes, I have a question, then a comment, and they're quite unrelated. The question is with respect to line 110 and the information that is included in the note, which is that you don't include interim ministers, but you do include ministers on the constituent role. And the reason I raise this question is that in the past, maybe the future, but not the present, we have had interim ministers, full-time or part-time, on the constituent role. And the question has been asked in our presbytery by certain people filling out these forms, do we just ignore all this? Because they are the interim minister and we're paying them 50% or whatnot. So why wouldn't we report that? So there's an inconsistency in your nomenclature there.
That's a good question. And I do not think Connie probably knows the answer, so we will ask Victor, and we will revise that if there is a thing. This is 100% comes from the GAO office, and they use they use those figures, so I don't know how they're using those figures. So I will find out for you, and we will send an update in an email or update the form. We do update the form from time to time when we get these questions.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
The other comment is completely unrelated, and it's more of a comment on the descriptions you're using and the reasoning behind it. And that relates to the whole question of the exclusion of mission money from the dollar base, which I fully understand and fully support. I also fully support the distinction that you've made up until now of excluding presbytery and synod dues, because you see that as operation. But the philosophical point I want to put in here is that in the case of our presbytery, for example, fully a quarter of the presbytery's budget is transfers to qualified donees in the form of other mission agencies, and fully another quarter is transferred to the synod, and 80% of that money is a transfer to a qualified donee in the running of the Gracefield Christian Camp and Retreat Center. So there are people who question, as a congregation, we can deduct what we give directly to Gracefield, but we can't deduct what we give indirectly, which is in fact a very substantial amount of our presbytery dues and of our synod dues. So I just raised the question that perhaps that should be thought through going forward in terms of whether we see the support of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship and those kind of student outreaches, and we have several of them, cooperative chaplaincies with outreach as the mission of the church, and our camping as mission. And if we do we still want to consider that as something that we, your words, tax the congregation on in terms of the assessments?
And I used the word tax not because I think any of these are taxes. So it kind of makes my goosebumps on my arm when I said that, but I also know it's easier for people to understand sometimes. So I will say that I agree with you on that. It was raised by one other presbytery, I think it was Saskatchewan, a couple of years ago. So I will put that forward. We always, every year, are assessing what is included and what is excluded. And I will put that forward to the group who will continue to assess it. Yeah, so thank you.
Our presbytery dues would be exactly half of what they are if we didn't support camp or the missions.
Yeah. I totally agree. So maybe we figure out, okay, is there a way to say the presbytery part of your dues? But we want to make it simple too. So maybe we just throw in all presbytery dues. I mean, coordinating together our mission and ministry is part of it. So as long as we're fair to all congregations, it shouldn't really adjusted. Unfortunately, your assessments, as long as everyone's being treated the same way, then the assessments are adjusted, I know, for pension, and I'm assuming for presbytery and synod, as those sort of dollar base gets adjusted.
Well, so I've always sort of thought the same, but since I happen to be at the moment an assessor member of the Synod of BC, for reasons the General Assembly assigned, I was quite astonished to discover how low the presbytery or synod assessments are there, because they don't fund camping or anything else out of that. And so I'm thinking to myself, there's probably not a standard across the country, and it would be worth looking into.
Excellent, James. Thank you. And we do take seriously all of the changes we do every year is because we get feedback like that when we do these webinars, and we take it seriously. So thank you very much. And James, you has always given us excellent feedback over the years. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining